Alright, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel, and today I just want to go over the charts because quite a lot has changed in one trading session since the weekend's deep dive. So let's get straight into it. Look, the dollar is catching a little bit of a bid right now, and it's going to be super important to see if it rejects at resistance and moves down towards that 3-year cycle low, or if this thing breaks out, right, then we are going to have to entertain the fact that the 3-year cycle low is probably already in. Now, on a balanced probabilities, it tells me we are going to reject at resistance and roll over. And the reason I say that is because gold is about to make a cycle low. So if I get rid of this yellow squiggle, that is approximately correct, or has turned out to be approximately correct. You can see we expected a daily cycle low in here for gold, and it's thinking about confirming. Now, maybe it has to roll over one more time and we end up marking it slightly later, but we're in that timing window to expect to see a daily cycle low. We would expect to see confirmation of a cycle low via a swing low pattern and a breakout here. And if we're going to do that, okay, if we're going to do something like this for gold, then that tells me the dollar is probably going to reject at resistance. So in that neighborhood, to get to see a push from gold, and thus in that neighborhood as well to get to see a rejection for the DXY. Over in the stock market, the S&P 500, we've had this yellow squiggle here for a while. We've been expecting this to top in the not too distant future and then roll over into a daily and weekly cycle low. I'm getting quite a few people ask me, how is it that I'm calling for a blow off top in the stock market, but also calling for a decline into a daily and weekly cycle low? And the answer is pretty simple. If I zoom all the way out, then you'll see we've got the first angle of attack in red at the bottom. Once we find, let's assume this yellow squiggle plays, right? Once we find that daily and weekly cycle low, this will become the second angle, something like this. And then we should get, some kind of blow off top, eventually setting a third and final near vertical angle of attack. And that will form our parabolic blow off top. So that's how we get the decline into the weekly cycle low and still end up with a parabolic blow off top. And so hopping into this melt up chart of mine, this is probably going to deviate, if I'm right, into a daily cycle low, like I said, and then start to do something much more like this. But ultimately, I do think it's not going to be far from how I've got it drawn here. Of course, this was never designed to predict an exact price level or time. This is just an arbitrary yellow squiggle. Similarly for the NASDAQ, right? The NASDAQ actually looks a bit weaker than the S&P 500. It set a trend line. It tried to break out and didn't. Now, it doesn't mean it can't today. And if it does, that tells us to keep an open mind about probably seeing a little bit more upside before we get that rollover. But if this thing continues to close, especially lower lows below the low from, Friday's session, then, I think we've probably got a top. Okay, now again, we're right in that neighborhood to see a half cycle low, so we can indeed get a bounce out of here in the short term, but the cycles are down. The cycles are telling us that something more like this is coming. And so maybe we get it, maybe we don't just yet, but I stand with this idea because I've seen enough cycles to have trust and faith in them. I've traded enough of them over the years, and typically this is what we get. The Dow Jones is also firing subtle warning signs, in my opinion, that we have potentially seen the top for this cycle. The reason I say that is if I draw your eyes to this upward sloping red support line, we have had breakdown, retest, looking for that resumption lower. If I now draw your eyes to this downward sloping white resistance line, you can see breakout, retest, struggling to hold. Now, if we push off, fine, we get a bit more upside before we roll over. But particularly if we do not do that, if we roll over and continue to move down, then we will be on our way to that cycle low. That's what makes the most sense from the cycle count perspective. And that is why I've been hesitant to add back my longs after what was essentially a slightly early exit, right? We got in and then we got out somewhere in this neighborhood, and then we've missed out on a few points. But I said, I'm not going to chase this move higher because this is expected. Like I said, the NASDAQ kind of thinking about confirming that. The Dow Jones also thinking about confirming that, right? So overall, we've still got some exposure via the Dow. We'll keep pushing this long until it becomes unreasonable to do so. We've got the stop choked up, which is indicated by this dashed red line. And for now, we're long and strong, right? If it moves up higher again, then we'll continue to push. And if it rolls over, then we can say, okay, with pretty strong levels of confidence, this is most probably the scenario we've got in play. We also got exposure via the Russell 2K, right? And that is also firing a couple of mixed warning signals, right? If I draw your eyes to this upward sloping red support line, what do you see? Breakdown, retest, possible resumption to the downside. But conversely, we've got this range break in blue, and so far we are kind of holding above it, right? So as ever, one day at a time, but as you can see, hopefully by now, the idea of this was being heavily challenged a little while ago. Going back to here when I sold, this idea was being very heavily challenged. No, we're in a blow off top, we're going straight up. And we did, of course, up until now. But like I keep saying, I think we're in that timing window to start to see these cycles turn down. Just in the short to medium term, this daily and weekly cycle low would be around the second or third week of April. That would be bang average and normal and to be expected in the stock market. And then, of course, last but not least, we've got crypto and the crypto related stocks. We've got Bitcoin, I should say, and the crypto related equities. So it seems to me like this left-hand count might be correct. Now, I didn't like this for all the reasons I've mentioned a million times. This is early. The miners confirmed this one, this right-hand one, and that's why we got a bunch of question marks and yellow arrows instead of the greens like we would normally have. But it seems to me, right, like it's thinking about finding a cycle low here, and if that's the case, then we'll have to scratch this one off and this one off. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays. The things I'll be looking for to confirm a cycle low are, of course, a swing low, a violent push off, and a trendline break in the timing window to see one. So that's what I'm looking out for. Now, as it stands and as presented in yesterday's video, this could well be a bit of the 3 left, or we could well be in that macro 4 before the 5. So if that's the case, we could even expect some kind of annoying compression, a triangle pattern, or if, let's assume this is the cycle low, we do something like this, and then it turns out to be one of those consolidation cycles. Let me borrow one. So if I grab my fractal tool and I grab this, for example, here's an example of a consolidation cycle. So I grab this and put it over the current price action, make it a bit more opaque so you can actually see it. Take a look at this, right? This is, like I said, that's a consolidation cycle, 60-day consolidation cycle, just meaning it spends the time going sideways instead of an uptrending or a downtrending cycle. You can see if I put this here, right, we might do something in the neighborhood of find a cycle low, rally up, but then kind of just chop around sideways for a while. We would end up putting our next cycle low somewhere in this neighborhood, and then we would blast off from here. This whole pattern that I've got here would form the corrective 4 before that 5 from yesterday's video. There's also another example of one of these consolidation cycles here. So if I grab this, fit this thing approximately here, you can see it might look a little something like this, right? Where we make a cycle low, we rally up, then we do a whole heap of nothing, chop around, make another cycle low 60 days out, and then blast off in that final leg higher. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is what we see. Equally, I also wouldn't be surprised if we just come blasting out of here and do something like this. That's going to be a one day at a time, as always, situation. For now, though, we got some choices, right? We could be thinking about taking some off here and looking to add back on a trend line break. There's no saying that this is going to stop at this upper sloping blue support line. This could easily come all the way back down to here. Now, I don't actually think that's that likely, but if it did, we would still just be maintaining bullish structure here, right? Wouldn't be the end of the world. So you have to be open to that, and to each their own. For me personally, I'm not looking to take any Bitcoin off here. I'm looking to find a cycle low, perhaps add out of this cycle low, and if we get a consolidation cycle, think about adding another position out of that one, because what should come next is that final 5 to what I believe will be the ultimate top. Assuming we do get some kind of consolidation cycle like this, right? Like I said, I'll be looking to add perhaps out of here, and then looking to add one more time if we get the opportunity. And then it will be a case of trying to see if we can get some blow off top, right? Make it up to 150K-ish. And then I'll be looking to dump the whole lot, hopefully with an additional position somewhere in this neighborhood, something like this, for example. And then I'll be looking to close the entire thing out. And if this is to occur, right, we would have set the first angle in red, the second angle in red. We'll have this third angle that we'll need to modify. It will look probably something like this, right? And then arguably, we might even have a fourth near vertical angle. And on a trend line breakdown of here, that's where I'll be looking to dump the whole lot, exit out to gold, property, buy myself a few cars, whatever else, right? So this is how I'm planning to deal with the top. And again, you know, one day at a time, as always. There's always a chance that we get something like this, and then later on have to draw a trend line and respect that breakout. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, right? For now, as per yesterday's video, we should be expecting this 4 in the Elliott wave system to play out somewhere in this neighborhood. Now, whether that means we need a consolidation cycle or whether we're just going to have a sharp correction that goes quite deep and then comes tearing out of here, that's to be determined. Okay, but like I said, for now, I'm in early enough, right? We got the core allocation at the lows. We've got these 2 positions here. I'm in early enough to be able to tolerate a nice big pullback, sit through that happily, add another position, whether it's from where I've got it here or whether it's from way lower down, right? We'll add a 3rd position, and then we would have stacked plenty of positions, have loads of exposure without taking additional risk going into that final leg higher. And like I said, I'll be looking to try to get out of this position somewhere in this neighborhood, dump the whole lot, and then probably be out of the Bitcoin market for some time. A lot of people have been asking me, am I planning to short Bitcoin at the top? No, but I probably will short the crypto-related equities because they're higher beta, so they should crash faster. Again, though, let's not be planning to short things before we've even got our full exposure, right? We're still in that neighborhood where I want to add more positions. We're still in that neighborhood where we haven't even sold or been thinking about selling the top just yet. All right, so one thing at a time. Let's get another position on, okay? Let's manage the risk properly. Let's see if we can catch the squeeze like I think. Let's see if this actually plays out, because, you know, we don't know if we're going to just consolidate here for 6 months, okay? I have no idea. Nobody knows. So open to everything as always. But for now, I want to add that position, see if we can get that squeeze into a left translated cycle top, and then we've got to try and sell the top, right? That's no easy feat. I make it sound like, we're just going to sell the top, but the reality is it's much easier to say it than it is to do it. I'm attempting to do it publicly, which adds another layer of difficulty and complexity to this. So yeah, one thing at a time. For now, let's see if we can find the cycle low, see if we can add some positions, and then let's see if we can actually get that left translated cycle expansion. Over in the crypto related equities, right, I'm thinking about lightening up just a little bit here, and I'll explain to you why, right? First of all, we've been pushing these trades above this upper sloping blue support line, but it's now looking like we've got this kind of breakdown, retest, possible resumption lower. And if that's the case, then we've also set this downward sloping white resistance line, which will give us an area on the chart around which we can manage the risk and confirm a cycle low. So we're kind of expecting this cycle low to play something like this, right? Something like this into here, and then turn around, break out, confirm on a breakout, and out of there, like I said, I'll also be thinking about adding another position here. But given how far down we got in, right, given how much profit this is, given that these positions are lightly leveraged, now seems like a pretty reasonable time to pay myself a little bit. So I'm thinking of lightening up between 30 and 50% across these crypto-related equities that are sat in massive open profit. I'm thinking about taking some off here for Coinbase. So probably going to do that today, just lighten up a little bit. I'll put a little text thing here to say take partial. So I think we're going to take some partial profit here, and we'll see what happens. Of course, if you're a member, I'll notify you in the member section. The MicroStrategy trade as well. Look, we've been pushing this trade until it became unreasonable to continue to push it. And as it stands, looks like we got that indeed breakdown of the upper sloping third angle of attack. So again, I think another take partial in this neighborhood. Let me copy this one. Perhaps if we can get a gap backfill, something like this, that'd be pretty nice. Take some partial here and then look for something like this to play out. Again, we'll be able to draw a trend line similarly and add back if we get there. But I think in the interest of booking some gains, right? Because again, these are big trades, right? We got in pretty low, lightly leveraged, stacked multiple positions. Now we're all the way up here. So now seems like a pretty good time to pay myself a little bit. And I'll say this, right? You've got to do what's right for you. So for me, I'll be annoyed at myself if I don't take profit here, right? And I'm not talking about closing the whole thing. I still want plenty of exposure. I still think that we're probably going to just build some structure out and then rip higher one more time. I still think that's possible. But if I weigh both scenarios, okay, scenario one is I don't take profit here and we pull back. How do I feel? Well, I'm going to be really annoyed at myself because, look at this trade. I need to take some profit here. I need to pay myself. Now, if you're the sort of person that you will lose sleep at night, right? If you take profit here and it shoots up, okay, then maybe that's not for you. But I don't care if that happens. I'll still have 50 to 70% of my exposure if we rip higher. But I will be really annoyed at myself if I don't sell here and we pull back, right? So consider all possible outcomes. How are you going to feel if you sell, take a bit off and it goes higher? How are you going to feel if you sell, take a bit off and it goes lower? How are you going to feel if you don't sell and it goes higher? How are you going to feel if you don't sell and it goes lower? Consider all of this and do what is right for you. For me, I don't care if this thing rips higher after I sell. Similarly to the stock market, right? I took a bit off early and I said, that's fine, because I don't care if I give back a few points or I miss out on a few points. That's fine. I just want to book the meat of the move. I want to pay myself. And it's the same deal here, right? I want to pay myself. I'm going to take some partial here off of Coinbase and off of MicroStrategy, and I'll be looking to add a third position after we've built some structure out. But that could well be 2 months away, because like I was saying with Bitcoin, if we have to bounce out of here and put in a 60-day consolidation cycle, well, needless to say, 60 days, it's a couple of months, right? We might be a couple of months of chopping around here. And if that's true, then these may well end up chopping around here for a couple of months or bleeding significantly. So like I said, we've got in early enough. Now seems like a pretty good time to take some off. At some point, once we've built some structure out, once we can draw a trend line, find a breakout out of a cycle low, then I can always add it back, right? And if something like this happens, then I'm not going to be annoyed that we had all this open profit and I gave it all back, right? I'm not going to be annoyed because I would have taken a big chunk off, ready to reload down here. Now, I don't think that's coming, but like I said, for me personally, the right thing to do is to take some off here. These have been great trades and I want to pay myself, ready to re-enter once we eventually build some structure out before that final fifth wave higher in Bitcoin. I've got no trading positions open for Riot at the moment, but I will be likely adding some back in the not too distant future. And Marathon, I only have the one position, so it's okay. We're going to keep pushing this, see where we can find some support, and then think about adding another position ready for that final leg higher. There is probably some kind of horrible chop coming for Mara, but eventually I suspect this thing turns around and blasts off as Bitcoin enters that final leg higher. As you can see, overall things are pretty much doing what they're expected to do, right? The stock market is probably going to be looking for a cycle low in the not too distant future. Gold should be finding a cycle low any day now. Bitcoin also should be finding a cycle low any day now, but we may have to be open to building out a bit of structure first. That's going to be a one day at a time process as always. I will say this, if Bitcoin ends up doing some kind of giant nosedive over the weekend, right, something like this, right, then I don't think we need to build the structure sideways. I don't think we need to do that. If it nosedives and puts in this big V, then by the time we're about here, I think it'll be pretty obvious that we're going straight to the moon from there. So that's something to keep in mind. That's something I'll be looking at, right? A big plunge, something like this, will tell me that we don't have to build the structure. We're just going to wipe everyone out that's over leveraged and then send this thing to 150k. But if we end up doing something more like this, right, something a bit lukewarm, then that to me will be a tell, like I said, that we've got to build some structure before we can go. So as ever, one day at a time. But as you can see, overall, everything is pretty much doing what it's expected to do. We knew that either this date right here or this one in about 15 days time, we knew one of these two was going to show up as a cycle low, and indeed we are getting that pullback, which tells me this count is probably correct. So we'll let it confirm, we'll let the market tell me, right? I'm not trying to guess, not trying to impose my will on the market or anything like that, right? What will be will be. I just want the market to tell me, and then I'll hop on once the market has let me know. So until next time, take care from me, all the best, cheers, bye.